I have legitimately tried to make this recording 4 times now. Let's see if my tech doesn't fail me. This is my review of Go Like Hell by AJ Baim. If you've seen the movie Ford versus Ferrari, it covers those same events. I don't know if that movie is necessarily based on this book, if it's one of those kind of nonfiction adaptations, but it's about the same people and the same goings on. Basically, the Ford Motor Company in the 60s wanted to purchase part of Ferrari, and the deal ended up going sour, and both companies were pissed at each other. And so Ford said, "We're going to get into racing and we're going to beat you at Le Mans." And if you're unfamiliar, Le Mans is a 24-hour race in France. The goal is to continually be going as hard as you can for 24 hours straight. You've got multiple drivers that switch out, but like the car has to keep going the whole time, with the exception of like pit stops and stuff, and those can cost you time. Those can screw you up. You're not going for distance or anything. It's just however far you can get in 24 hours. And they also max or log your maximum speed or your average speed and stuff. Like it's really freaking intense. I was among those that would make fun of motorsports and motorsports aficionados when I was younger, just because I don't get it. I even attended a NASCAR race once in my early 20s, as like a charity thing. Like we volunteered time to be ushers, and they would make a donation to my sister's marching band or whatever. And like even after being at one, I'm just like, man, I don't get it. But for the people that are really invested in like the pit crew side of it and the numbers and the competition and stuff, like it's a very precise game to watch, and it takes skill to be able to do all that. Like, man, I've seen some reels about Formula One racers and what kind of physical shape they've got to be in. They've got to have really solid endurance. Their reflexes have to be insane, and especially like their core strength and their spinal strength has to be really strong. Not as strong as the climate protesters that I keep running over every day, but you get it. This isn't Formula One Le Mans, but I think it's technically stock car. Like I still don't know all the different types and styles and stuff. I just know that I like that precision engineering aspect of it. It was beneficial to me to read this book as I'm getting ready to do another round of edits on Howling Wilderness, because there are little details and stuff that I can work into that story that would add authenticity to this fantasy setting. If it's a matter of like, oh, we've got to replace this part on a machine after 1,000 miles, and oh, this part might wear down, or we got to be careful here. Like I've addressed some of those little details, but I can see myself adding in just a few more on the next pass to kind of help the reader suspend disbelief with some of the other elements of it. I really want to see the movie now. Matt Damon plays Carroll Shelby, who, for the most part, he's affiliated with Ford. The Shelby Cobra is his thing. He also made some cool stuff with Dodge in the 80s. John Bernthal plays Lee Iacocca, who was a sales guy for Ford before he ended up becoming the CEO or general manager or something of Chrysler in the 80s. That was at a time when, well, it's kind of always been this way. Like Chrysler's been a roller coaster company. They're either doing really well or really poorly. And they were doing really poorly in the 80s when he got assigned to take over on that job. And he was responsible for like one of the best corporate comebacks ever, like getting them back into solvency and thriving and stuff. And I just like John Bernthal as an actor. He had like a small part in a movie I watched just the other night. I watched Sicario for the first time. I've got some thoughts on that one later that I'll need to write up. And then, of course, Christian Bale plays Ken Miles. Tragic story. I didn't know much about Ken Miles. He was a tank operator in, what would it have been? This was the 60s. He was in his 40s. So, yeah, it would have been World War II. And like a tank driver, and then he became a mechanic and a race car driver in his 40s. Tragically, he dies. I don't know if they cover that in the movie or if it's just something like they might mention in an epilogue, but they cover it in the book. It's crazy to think of how regular there were casualties in stock car racing like this back in the day. They talk about Ralph Nader and his rise to prominence and how he kind of became the villain of the motor racing world. If you're unfamiliar with him, he's one of those guys that was the kind of permanent third-party candidate in several presidential contests for decades. And in the late 60s, he wrote a book called Unsafe at Any Speed. And he was like really just going to town, like attacking Detroit and the motor companies and stuff. And he became kind of like their number one guy to hate. But a lot of the things that he advocated for did decrease motor vehicle casualties. So as annoyed as I am personally, like looking back at that era of muscle car history and stuff and thinking what a ninny he is and how like he ended the muscle car era, some of the implementations that he advocated for have saved lives. So to be fair, there is that. Yeah, like I said, I really want to see Ford versus Ferrari now. I wonder how true it will be to all of this story, but in general, I've taken an even greater interest in American motor vehicle history in the mid 20th century. It's kind of like my favorite era of cars as I continue to prowl around on Facebook Marketplace and find rusted old Mopars hanging out in Oklahoma City. I just keep thinking, man, like I could really get into one of these projects once this freaking economy calms down. We'll see. See if we can get some leadership changed around in Washington. But I guess we'll wait for that to happen when it happens. Anyway, shorter video today, but this is an endorsement for Go Like Hell. I'll give it an easy 4 stars. I don't know if I would give it 5. But I did really enjoy it. It was an easy read. And I'll let you know how the movie goes when I get around to it. Until next time, ha ha ha, drive safe. See you out there.